If you are overwhelmed with your yard, or if you have really big dreams for your yard that you're excited about and you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed about how to bring it to life, you're in the right place. So there are two parts to this video. The first part is going to be things that you can very easily do if you are low on time. And then the second part, we're going to talk about the landscape redesign process. If you have longer term, bigger ideas that you're excited about, how that redesign process just can be as efficient as possible. And right at the start, you need to understand that an overnight transformation is not possible. In the world of landscaping, in interior design maybe, but plants take time to grow. Landscapes, we have seasons, we have weather, we have to be timing things around. It's going to be a slower process. I still have tips, but we just have to embrace this part of the process. It's going to take time. And it's way more rewarding that way. My name's Eve. I'm a horticulturist. I'm a landscape designer. I teach do-it-yourselfers how to create their own landscape designs. I offer step-by-step guidance through the entire design process in my online course, which I created after offering years of in-person landscape design services. So hello, welcome to Garden Project Academy. If you are short on time, here are some things that you can easily do this weekend to neaten things up. My number one tip is to neaten up the edges or add new edges. So anywhere that two different soil covering materials are interacting. This could be lawn, pavement. It could be lawn and garden bed. An edge is just that neat transition from one material to another. It does not necessarily need to be a physical edging material. You don't need metal, you don't need plastic, you don't need brick. The most important thing is that this edge is neat. You can have the most messy, chaotic landscape, and the fastest way to make it look a little bit more intentional would be neatening up those edges. So you can have straight lines, curved lines, but those lines should be crisp. And this is a way to create an effect that your landscape is more intentional, more organized than it actually is, just making that edge look crisp. I am personally a fan of more naturalistic and more significantly more chaotic looking landscapes. But again, if you have a messy landscape and you have limited time, really fast way to create a little bit of neatness. Similar but different, clean off all the sidewalks, the pathways, refresh pathway materials, or even add a new pathway, because pathways create these neat visual resting areas. They create this sense of intentionality. A very neat intentional looking pathway through a sea of chaos is going to make that chaos look more intentional. My next tip I talk about on this channel all the time. You could probably hear it before I say it, mulch. If you're dealing with a lot of weeds, you're wondering how everybody else keeps up with all of that weeding, the answer is mulch. You need to top dress your mulch every few years, depending on the material you use. Or if you're weeding an area that has no mulch, you poor thing, then you need to mulch. The first initial application of mulch needs to be deep, like 2 to 3 inches deep, or 4, I'm not kidding. Of course, do not bury small plants, but you can actually use mulch. You could go deeper than that to intentionally smother out grass, weeds. Learn more about sheet mulching. Please note that you can also get arborist chip mulch for free. This video is not sponsored by a website called Chip Drop, but it probably should be. Please note that if you have any particularly aggressive, invasive weed species, I'm talking Japanese knotweed, bindweed, tree of heaven, some weeds can require special attention, or you can even make the situation a little bit worse. So learn a little bit more about what you have on hand. It can be helpful to get some things identified at the start. And if you want to learn more about sheet mulching, mulch materials, mulch best practices, check out my playlist, which I'll link in the corner right now. And I'll also link to that in the description below. Another common tip is to remove or prune messy, overgrown plants. But before recommending this, I want to say, if you plan on making any more than just a few quick changes to your landscape, please wait to clear things out. Established plants are a precious resource, and everyone's first instinct is to head out with a chainsaw, a weed eater, and make everything look a little bit neater and more open. But many treasures are lost this way. So please don't whack away at something if you don't know what it is yet. And yes, even if a plant is messy, I recommend creating a landscape design plan, having more of the picture in place before you just go and clear everything out. Because even messy looking plants can be a valuable asset in a future design layout. It might become an important backdrop plant. It can be designed around in a creative way to make your landscape look more established sooner. Or you can sometimes transplant even larger things to other parts of the landscape if it definitely can't stay there. Sometimes things can also act as transitional plantings, providing even just a little bit of shade until other plants fill in. You can have a more established looking landscape until you later remove it once other things get a little bit bigger. A blank canvas is more difficult to work with. It's more expensive to work with. So please wait to clear. This will probably surprise you, but the lowest maintenance landscapes are actually the ones that are planted densely. Dense does not mean messy. Dense and messy are not the same thing. But keep in mind that anytime you have an established plant that's covering the soil, that is that much less area that needs to be mulched, weeded, mowed, or replanted later on. A giant shrub that feels too big on its own in its natural form, it might feel a little odd or like it needs to be removed. But let's say you add a plant or next to it, a smaller shrub next to it, you add something that flowers, then you add a neat edge all around that. Suddenly you have a beautiful, established, fully established garden bed in just a year or two. You're done, as opposed to having a blank canvas, more lawn, more of something else to deal with, a stump just sitting out in the middle of nowhere. It's less space that you need to be taking care of. Another tip, not my favorite tip, but it does work, is to add a few annuals from the garden center. It's not my favorite tip because I'm not personally a fan of having to rebuy and replant anything year after year, but it is true that it does make your landscape more conventionally appealing to others when there's a few annuals here or there. So if you only have this weekend, you're looking for a quick fix, just to add just a little bit, some sprinkles on top of the cupcake, then grab a few annual plants. Though I highly recommend doing some research and investing in some longer term plants or native wildflowers that probably won't be sold at your garden center. If you want to look into some more investment plants, I'd recommend my free mini course, How to Choose the Perfect Plant. It's about an hour long. Again, it's free. Do a little bit of research and select something that can be a more permanent addition. That's always my recommendation. But everybody does like this tip to get a couple of annual plants, especially if you're just trying to look for something to make things look a little bit nicer right now and you're okay with the potential reinvestment. So these are a few of my top make a yard look nicer today tips, but most people approach me looking for longer term solutions. They want to invest in things that are going to reduce maintenance or make significant improvements to how they spend time in the landscape. So let's talk about planning a landscaping project. Of course, for this, a landscape design is the first step, and here's what you need to know. A landscape design plan is not meant to plan everything in perfect detail, but it is critical that you articulate that end vision before you get started. You're essentially slowing down now, you're making that plan so you can speed up more later on. It's not just the aesthetic end vision, it's the practical, functional parts of the design. It's a plan. It's what you do first and second. And this plan needs to be in enough detail, but not too much. A good landscape design plan starts with learning from the space and customizing your design based on the space, the characteristics of the space. And this creates a shorter path to bringing it all to life, thanks to you playing to the strengths. If you have a space that's mucky, instead of trying to improve the drainage, maybe you're embracing that and planting some really interesting seasonal wetland plants. There's some really good plant options for just about any conditions or characteristics. It can be expensive sometimes to make changes to the characteristics of your yard, but if you're creative, they can actually become assets. A quality landscape design plan is all about prioritization. So what is most important? What are your goals for the space? How do you want to spend time in the space? What needs to be done first, second, and third? Prioritizing plantings, what needs to be planted first, second, and third, and why. Your plan is not done until you have some steps in order. And there's a surprising amount of flexibility when it comes to installation phase planning. Some steps need to come before others, yes. A lot of it can be customized based on your needs, and you should walk away from that planning process with an idea of what needs to happen first, second, and third. A quality plan breaks down your end vision, your clear end vision, into bite-sized steps so you can bring it to life one step, one bite at a time, and with reasonable looking checkpoints in between, because you don't want your yard to look like a construction zone forever. There's also intermediary materials that can act as checkpoints. Sometimes the checkpoints can be simpler versions of your end goal so you can begin actually living in your outdoor space as soon as possible. Maybe you have this dream for this beautiful plunge pool, but you don't have the budget yet. You could start out with a pool kit and test it out. You can start swimming today. Intermediary steps in general are especially important if you have younger humans in your life, because kids are only kids for so long. And if you have this big end vision that's going to require a budget that you're saving for, sometimes we can have these intermediary steps that can make it possible for you and the people in your life to be enjoying the landscape as soon as possible. These are all things that should be included in a quality landscape design plan. So this is probably shining a little bit of light into why you can't just, in an hour or less, create a landscape design plan. All of this being said, if you want help creating a landscape design, check out my course, Design Your Own Landscape Layout. It guides you step by step through the entire design process, and it costs less than a few hours with a landscape designer. This is why I created it. If you are looking for a more budget-friendly alternative, as opposed to hiring a landscape designer for the whole process, if you're excited about creating a plan yourself, this is the resource for you. It's why it exists. Now, when it comes to the installation itself, a few tips. It's really common to have this all or nothing approach to hiring help, because if you don't have a big budget, or if you get a few bids for work that you know will need to be done, and these bids come in really high, it's really common to have this immediate reaction, like, I am going to just DIY everything. Hiring help is crazy expensive. And that's when people turn to places like YouTube. Hi, welcome. Instead of hiring a landscaping company to redo your yard for many thousands of dollars, perhaps you just hire them to help you with the soil prep, the mulch. Hire a professional to help you manage an aggressive invasive weed species, for example. If there's some part of the process that's overwhelming you, hire for just that process. You can also hire people for just a few hours to consult. Hire a designer to consult on your plan. You can also hire friends, local high school kids, to help spread mulch. I remember being that high school kid and really appreciating the cash. So just don't all or nothing. DIY or hire. There's in-between solutions. Bring in some help. Perhaps one of the best parts of working with plants and gardening is that the process itself is incredibly enjoyable. Time spent outside. You're creating something real. You get to be in the sun. You get to watch plants grow that you planted. They're small. Years later, you're sitting under them in the shade. The process itself can also be part of the purpose of taking on a landscaping project. And I think for many people it is. But when you're feeling overwhelmed, you have this approach, I need to get this done right away. So get some support, get intermediary steps. So you have these checkpoints. So your yard is not a construction zone for years. But also remember to enjoy this part of the process. It's not going to be an overnight transformation. You will be sold many, many solutions, shortcuts, plastic things that you can buy for your landscape that are supposed to make the process so much easier, that end up later down the road creating even more maintenance. Let's talk about rubber mulch. Please don't ever buy rubber mulch. That's a great example of this. Watch out for those shortcuts. Embrace the fact that some of this is, you have to spread wooden mulch, bark mulch. It's going to take time. And if you want more help, you want to learn more about reducing maintenance, check out my next video, Landscape Design Mistakes That Lead to More Maintenance. It's an older video, you'll see, based on the quality, but check it out. It's got a lot of good info. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.